Picture standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Giza, its massive stones perfectly aligned with the stars, its construction so precise that even modern engineers struggle to explain how it was done. This isn't just ancient history, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved, a reminder that thousands of years ago, the Egyptians achieved feats that still leave us in awe today. But here's the thing, the pyramids are just the beginning. Hidden beneath the sands of time are secrets far more astonishing: advanced technologies, forgotten sciences, and inventions so ahead of their time that they challenge everything we think we know about the ancient world. What if I told you the ancient Egyptians might have harnessed electricity, or that they developed a form of concrete more durable than what we use now? These aren't wild guesses, they're possibilities backed by clues left behind in temples, tombs, and cryptic hieroglyphs. From mysterious lenses that could focus light with unbelievable precision to medical tools that predate modern surgery by millennia, the Egyptians weren't just building monuments, they were innovators pushing the boundaries of what was possible in ways we're only starting to understand. This video is a journey into the heart of those mysteries. We're going to uncover 25 lost technologies of the ancient Egyptians' inventions and knowledge so advanced, so baffling, that their disappearance might just be one of history's greatest untold stories. Some of these discoveries will make you question what you've been taught about the past. Others will leave you wondering how much more is still buried, waiting to be found. So if you've ever looked at an ancient artifact and thought, how did they do that? You're about to get some answers, and trust me, by the end, you'll never see history the same way again. The Great Pyramid of Giza isn't just an ancient wonder. It's a mathematical and engineering masterpiece that defies logic. Take one step inside and you'll notice something eerie. The precision here isn't just impressive for its time. It rivals what modern architects could achieve today. The pyramid's base is nearly a perfect square, with sides aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions: true north, south, east, and west. We're talking about an error margin of just a fraction of a degree. To put that in perspective, with all our satellites and GPS technology, we'd still struggle to replicate that level of accuracy on such a massive scale. Then there are the stones themselves, over 2 million blocks, some weighing more than 80 tons, fitted together so tightly you can't slide a credit card between them. No mortar was used, yet they've held strong for thousands of years. How, unlike modern construction, where even steel and concrete shift over time, the pyramid's design accounts for natural settling. The blocks interlock in a way that distributes weight perfectly, preventing collapse even through earthquakes. But here's the real mystery: the tools. The Egyptians supposedly had only copper chisels and wooden sleds, yet they cut and moved limestone and granite with laser-like precision. Some theorists suggest they might have had access to lost stone-shaping technology, maybe even sonic or vibrational tools that softened rock. Others point to the pyramid's inner passages, where drill marks show counterclockwise spirals at a rate impossible to achieve by hand. Could they have had machinery we haven't discovered? And let's not forget the pyramid's astronomical alignment. The shafts inside point directly to key stars like Sirius and Orion's belt, suggesting the builders had an advanced understanding of celestial movements. Was this just religious symbolism, or did they possess knowledge of astronomy we've since forgotten? Every layer of this structure raises more questions than answers, making it not just a tomb but a time capsule of lost genius. If the Egyptians built the pyramids with nothing but copper tools and brute strength, why do we find drill marks in granite that suggest machinery capable of cutting through stone like butter? The evidence left behind tells a different story than the one in history books. Deep within the ruins, archaeologists have uncovered granite blocks with perfectly cylindrical holes, some over 6 inches deep, carved with such precision that modern diamond-tipped drills would struggle to replicate them. The spiral grooves inside these holes show a consistent, rapid rotation, suggesting a drill bit moving at speeds impossible to achieve with hand-powered tools alone. Then there's the mystery of the saws. How did they slice through massive obelisks or create razor-thin seams in granite sarcophagi? Copper blades would have dulled instantly against such hard stone, yet the cuts are clean, often with no chipping or tool marks. Some researchers propose the Egyptians might have used abrasives like quartz sand, combined with a lost technique for applying immense controlled pressure. Others go further, pointing to curious hieroglyphs that resemble what could be advanced machinery, depictions of workers operating strange, box-like devices with levered arms. Could these be blueprints for tools we no longer recognize? And what about leveling? The pyramid's foundation is so flat that modern lasers detect less than an inch of deviation across its entire 13-acre base. Achieving this without optical instruments seems implausible. One theory suggests they used water-filled trenches as natural levels, but even that doesn't fully explain the flawless gradients in internal passages. A tantalizing clue comes from the Egyptian merkit, an ancient surveying tool that aligned with the stars. Could it have been part of a larger, more sophisticated system? The absence of these tools in the archaeological record is just as puzzling. If they existed, where did they go? Some speculate they were hoarded by elite craftsmen, buried in undiscovered vaults, or even deliberately destroyed to protect their secrets. One thing's certain: the more we study these gaps in history, the clearer it becomes that the pyramid builders knew far more than we've given them credit for. Their primitive tools might just be the ones we've found. The real question is, what haven't we found yet? Deep beneath the sands of Saqqara lies a chamber that defies explanation. The Serapeum, a labyrinth of tunnels housing 25 massive sarcophagi, each carved from a single block of granite weighing over 100 tons. The precision here is baffling. These aren't rough-hewn containers, they're masterpieces of engineering, with surfaces so smooth they reflect light like glass, corners so sharp they could have been cut by a machine, and lids that fit their bases with a seal tight enough to be airtight. The question isn't just how they were made, it's why. The official explanation claims these were burial vaults for sacred bulls, but that raises more questions than answers. Why would animals require coffins with tolerances measured in millimeters? Why use granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, requiring unimaginable effort to shape, when limestone would have sufficed? And most puzzling of all, how did they hollow out these monoliths? The interiors are just as flawless as the exteriors, with corners so precise they suggest the use of tools far beyond simple chisels and hammers. Modern engineers admit that even with diamond-tipped drills, replicating this would be a monumental challenge. Then there's the logistics. These sarcophagi were transported from quarries over 500 miles away down narrow tunnels and positioned with exact alignment. Some theorists propose the Egyptians had access to a lost method of softening stone, perhaps using a chemical or even sonic vibration, making granite temporarily malleable. Others point to the grooves and drill marks found inside the chamber's patterns that match the rotation of advanced machinery, not hand tools. Even the placement of the sarcophagi hints at something deeper. They're arranged in a way that suggests harmonic resonance, as if the chamber itself was designed to amplify sound. But the real enigma is the lids. Each one weighs upwards of 30 tons, yet they fit so perfectly that not even a hairline gap remains. How was this achieved without modern measuring devices? One controversial theory suggests the Egyptians might have used a form of liquid leveling, pouring a thin layer of solution to ensure absolute flatness before sealing. Another clue comes from the Hermetic texts, which speak of ancient stone-working secrets passed down from the gods. Could these sarcophagi be proof of that lost knowledge? The Serapeum doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient technology, it rewrites it. If this was merely a burial site, why the obsession with perfection? The answer might lie not in what these boxes were meant to hold, but in what they were meant to do: Some researchers speculate they were acoustic chambers designed to harness vibrational energy for healing or even communication. Others believe they were part of a larger, forgotten science, one that viewed stone not as a barrier but as a conduit. Until we uncover the tools that made them, the Serapeum remains one of history's most tantalizing riddles. Hidden within the Temple of Hathor at Dendera lies a carving that has sparked fierce debate for decades, a relief so strange it looks eerily out of place in an ancient Egyptian shrine. Known as the Dendera light, this enigmatic depiction shows what appears to be a giant, elongated bulb cradled by a stand, with a snake-like filament winding inside it, connected by cables to what some claim resembles a battery. To modern eyes, it's uncanny, almost like a blueprint for an electric light. But could the Egyptians really have harnessed electricity thousands of years before its official discovery? The argument hinges on unsettling details. The bulb is held aloft by a figure often interpreted as a priest, while another reaches toward its base as if adjusting a switch. The filament coils in a tight spiral, mirroring the design of early incandescent lights, and the cables trail downward into a box-like object that theorists compare to a power source. Even more striking, the surrounding symbols include what looks like electrical insulation layered bands that resemble the isolators on high-voltage equipment. Proponents of the theory point to the absence of soot in certain temples, asking how inner chambers were illuminated without torches or oil lamps leaving residue. Could this relief be a technical manual, preserving knowledge of a technology we've only rediscovered in the last 2 centuries? Skeptics, however, offer a very different interpretation. They argue the scene is purely symbolic, tied to Egyptian mythology. The bulb, they say, represents the lotus flower, a sacred symbol of creation, with a snake inside depicting the god Harsamtus, a deity associated with rebirth. The cables might be stylized lotus stems, and the power box could simply be a ceremonial offering table. As for the soot-free chambers, critics note that reflective mirrors or strategically placed sunlight could explain the lighting, and that many temples do show traces of lamp use. But here's where it gets fascinating. Experiments with replicas based on the relief's design have shown that, with the right materials, a primitive form of illumination is possible. Using copper, acids found in ancient artifacts and sealed vessels, researchers have generated faint glows hinting that even if the Dendera relief isn't a literal light bulb, it might encode forgotten electrochemical principles. Whether it's a divine metaphor or a lost invention, one thing is clear: the relief captures a sophistication we're still unraveling. And if it is just myth, why does it align so unnervingly with modern technology? The truth might be hidden somewhere between the sacred and the scientific, waiting to be switched on. Among the treasures unearthed from ancient Egypt sands, few are as mesmerizing as their glasswork, pieces so vibrant and flawless they seem to defy time itself. Take one look at a core-formed glass vessel from the 18th dynasty, and you'll notice something extraordinary. Colors so vivid they appear freshly painted, surfaces smoother than modern machine-polished glass, and patterns so intricate they'd challenge today's master artisans. How did a civilization without furnaces capable of reaching modern melting temperatures achieve such perfection? The answer lies in a blend of lost techniques and chemical knowledge we're only beginning to decode. The process began with a secret ingredient, natron, the same mineral used in mummification. Mixed with crushed quartz and plant ash, it created a formula that melted at lower temperatures than typical silica, allowing the Egyptians to work glass with astonishing precision. But the real magic was in their coloring. Cobalt produced deep blues, copper oxides yielded fiery reds and greens, and traces of gold, yes, actual gold, created ruby-like hues that shimmered in sunlight. These weren't random experiments, they were recipes meticulously recorded and guarded like state secrets. Modern analyzers reveal some shades, like the iconic Egyptian blue, involve compounds so complex they weren't replicated until the 19th century. Then there's the core forming technique, a method so ingenious it's still studied by glassblowers today. Artisans would mold a clay core into the desired shape, then dip it into molten glass, layering colors with rods of different pigments. As the glass cooled, they'd carve intricate designs by hand, sometimes adding gold leaf or delicate threads of glass for embellishment, the final step. Removing the clay core through a tiny opening, leaving behind a hollow masterpiece. The precision required was staggering. One miscalculation in heat or timing, and the piece would shatter. But perhaps the most baffling aspect is the uniformity. Across hundreds of artifacts, from tiny amulets to towering ceremonial vessels, the quality never wavers. No bubbles, no warping, no inconsistent pigmentation. This suggests a level of standardization, a controlled, almost industrial process far ahead of its time. Recent discoveries in Amarna workshops hint at furnaces designed for precise temperature zones, possibly using reflective materials to distribute heat evenly. The irony, for all our advanced technology, we still can't perfectly replicate some of these ancient colors. The exact blend of minerals, the firing conditions, even the timing of cooling, these secrets died with Egypt's glassmakers. Their work stands as a silent challenge, a reminder that sophistication isn't always measured by the tools you hold, but by the knowledge you wield. And somewhere in the chemistry of those radiant blues and golds, there might still be lessons waiting to be rediscovered. Standing before the towering ruins of an ancient Egyptian temple, it's hard not to wonder, how have these structures endured for millennia when so many modern buildings crumble after just decades? The answer might lie in a forgotten technology far more sophisticated than we've given them credit for. While modern concrete cracks and erodes within a century, the Egyptians developed stone binding methods so advanced that their monuments still stand after 5,000 years of wind, sand, and even earthquakes. Take a closer look at the mortar between the blocks of the Great Pyramid. At first glance, it appears to be simple limestone paste, but microscopic analysis reveals something extraordinary. This ancient concrete contains crystalline structures that actively repel water, preventing erosion, a property modern scientists are only now replicating with nanotechnology. Even more baffling, some samples show traces of organic compounds, possibly plant-based additives that gave the mixture self-healing properties, allowing microscopic cracks to seal themselves over time. Then there's the mystery of the Rosetta Stone's original pedestal. When Napoleon's team discovered it in 1799, they noted the base had fused so completely with the ground that it seemed to be growing from the earth itself. Modern researchers now suspect the Egyptians used a geopolymer, a synthetic stone made from heated clay and natron that chemically bonds with natural rock. This wouldn't just explain the pedestal's seamless fusion, but also how workers moved massive obelisks. If they cast sections on site as pourable stone, it would eliminate the need to transport 100-ton monoliths across deserts. The most compelling evidence comes from underground cisterns near Abusier. These water tanks, built around 2500 BC, show no signs of leakage despite constant submersion. Core samples reveal the walls contain a layered matrix of volcanic ash, burnt shells, and a mystery mineral that reacts with water to form an increasingly dense barrier over time. French materials scientist Joseph Davidovits recreated a similar formula in 1982, proving it could withstand saltwater corrosion better than Portland cement, the global standard since 1824. But here's what keeps archaeologists awake at night. We've found recipes for Egyptian beer, cosmetics, even mummification bombs, but not for their concrete. Either this knowledge was so valuable it was deliberately erased, or we're missing entire chapters of their technological texts. The irony is painful. A civilization that left behind millions of written records might have buried its most revolutionary invention in plain sight, waiting for us to recognize stone itself as their greatest invention. The Edwin Smith Papyrus isn't just an ancient medical text, it's a window into a world where Egyptian doctors performed surgeries and diagnosed injuries with a precision that wouldn't be matched for thousands of years. Dating back to around 1600 BC, this scroll reads less like primitive medicine and more like a modern trauma manual, complete with detailed anatomical terms, step-by-step procedures, and even a logical system for classifying injuries from treatable to beyond help. What's shocking isn't just the knowledge it contains, but the clinical coldness of its tone. There's no magic, no appeals to gods, just raw, empirical observation. Imagine a battlefield surgeon's handbook written 3 millennia before the concept of germ theory. Take one stunning example, the treatment for a dislocated jaw. The text instructs the physician to place their thumbs inside the patient's mouth, press down on the molars, and snap the jaw back into place, a technique still used today. It even warns against forcing the bone too far, noting the risk of permanent damage. This isn't guesswork, it's the result of meticulous trial and error, likely passed down through generations of healers. Another passage describes how to suture wounds with a needle and thread, recommending careful stitching to minimize scarring. But what's truly groundbreaking is the understanding of the brain. While later civilizations like the Greeks believed it was just a useless blob, the papyrus identifies it as the seat of motor control, linking head injuries to specific limb paralysis, a revelation that wouldn't resurface until the Renaissance. Then there's the diagnostic method. Each case follows a strict formula: examination, diagnosis, verdict, treat or not, and procedure. A fractured skull, for instance, is categorized by the type of break, linear, depressed, or compound, with tailored treatments for each. Some entries even describe symptoms of spinal cord damage, noting that a patient who can't move their legs but feels a pinprick has a better prognosis than one who feels nothing. This level of nuance suggests autopsies were performed, despite cultural taboos, because how else would they know the difference between a compressed vertebra and a severed cord? But the real mystery is what's missing. The papyrus stops abruptly mid-sentence, as if part of it was lost or deliberately hidden. Were there even more advanced techniques we'll never know about? The text's cool rationality clashes with other Egyptian medical scrolls filled with spells and potions, hinting at a possible divide between empirical surgeons and temple healers. One thing's certain: this wasn't medicine by trial and error. It was science, methodical and precise, forged in a time we've long underestimated. And that raises a chilling question: if they could mend broken spines and map brain function, what else did they know that never made it onto the papyrus? In a dimly lit museum vault in Baghdad sits an artifact that shouldn't exist. A small clay jar, barely 6 inches tall, with a copper cylinder inside, an iron rod at its core, and traces of an acidic residue coating its interior. Discovered in 1936 among ruins from the Parthian period around 2,000 years ago, these unassuming objects have sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. Could these so-called Baghdad batteries be proof that ancient civilizations harnessed electricity millennia before Galvani and Volta? The design is eerily functional. Fill the jar with an acidic electrolyte, vinegar, or citrus juice, both readily available in antiquity, and the copper and iron would create a chemical reaction, generating a measurable current. Experiments with replicas have confirmed this. Connected in series, these jars can produce up to 2 volts of electricity. That's enough to power a small LED light, or more intriguingly, to electroplate thin layers of metal onto objects. Which raises a tantalizing possibility. Could this explain how Egyptian and Mesopotamian artisans gilded jewelry with such uniform precision? Skeptics argue these jars were simply storage containers for sacred scrolls, pointing out the lack of wires or clear connectors. But this ignores key details. The asphalt stopper sealing the top isn't just a lid. It's an insulator, preventing the electrolyte from spilling while keeping the iron rod suspended without touching the copper. That's not a design you'd need for storing papyrus. And then there's the corrosion. The iron rods show pitting consistent with electrochemical reactions, as if they'd been repeatedly used in a liquid solution. The real mystery is the absence of larger-scale evidence. If these were batteries, where are the devices they powered? One theory suggests they might have been medical tools, delivering mild shocks for pain relief. Ancient texts describe using electric fish to numb ailments. Another possibility ties them to temple rituals, creating static charges to make statues weep or emit sparks, awing worshippers. But the most compelling clue comes from a set of gilded artifacts found nearby. Their gold layers suspiciously even, as if applied not by hammering but by some lost plating technique. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of wondering whether these jars could generate electricity, we should ask why a society capable of such innovation left so little trace of its applications. The answer might lie in the fragility of ancient technologies, knowledge hoarded by elites, destroyed in wars, or simply discarded when newer methods emerged. Whatever their true purpose, the Baghdad batteries stand as a humbling reminder. Sometimes the past hides its brilliance in plain sight, waiting for us to recognize it. Deep within the ruins of Karnak Temple lies a relic that shatters our assumptions about ancient timekeeping. The water clocks of Amenhotep III. These weren't simple buckets with holes, but precision-engineered instruments that divided the night into 12 exact hours, adjusting automatically for the changing lengths of seasons. Picture a stone basin carved with intricate scales, its inner surface covered in tiny markings so precise they could measure time down to intervals of just a few minutes. The genius wasn't just in the design, but in the understanding of physics that made it work. Water flowed from a small opening at the basin's base, dropping at a controlled rate as the chamber emptied. But here's what set it apart: the scales weren't uniform. They compensated for the natural slowdown of water flow as pressure decreased, with wider spacing at the top and tighter increments near the bottom. This meant that as the water level fell, each marked hour represented the same actual time despite the changing speed. Modern experiments with replicas show these clocks could track time with 95% accuracy, a feat unmatched until medieval Europe's mechanical clocks. The real brilliance, though, lay in their adaptability. Egyptian astronomers knew that nighttime hours lengthened and shortened with the seasons. Their solution: 12 adjustable scales, one for each month, etched along the inner walls. A priest would simply rotate the clock's interior cylinder to align with the current month's markings, ensuring accurate readings year-round. Some versions even featured floating indicators linked to gears, possibly the earliest example of feedback mechanisms in technology. But how did they calibrate such precision without modern tools? Archaeologists found clues in temple records, references to star clocks that used the transit of specific constellations to verify the water clock's accuracy each night. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was a closed-loop system where celestial observation and hydraulic engineering worked in tandem. Perhaps most startling is the clock's silent sophistication. Unlike sundials, they worked indoors or on cloudy nights, enabling precise timing for rituals, medical treatments, and even labor shifts. Fragmentary texts suggest they might have been linked to temple sound systems, triggering gongs or chanters at specific intervals. In a civilization that saw time as a sacred, cyclical force, these weren't just tools, they were bridges between the earthly and the divine. And somewhere in their dripping echoes, we hear the pulse of a science far ahead of its age. Buried beneath the sands of ancient burial sites lie metal objects that defy conventional history: daggers forged from celestial iron, gold jewelry with alloy compositions modern labs struggle to replicate, and copper tools hardened to near-steel durability. The Egyptians didn't just work metal, they mastered it with techniques that vanished for centuries after their civilization fell. Take the dagger of Tutankhamun, its blade shimmering with an unearthly luster. When scientists analyzed it in 2016, they made a startling discovery. The iron wasn't mined from Earth. It came from a meteorite, its crystalline structure revealing origins in the depths of space. This wasn't just ceremonial luck. The dagger's nickel-rich composition matched meteor fragments found in the Red Sea hills, proving the Egyptians actively sought and recognized extraterrestrial metal. But here's the real marvel: they shaped it. Iron from meteorites, called by 3NPT or metal from the sky in hieroglyphs, is notoriously brittle when heated. Yet Tut's blade shows precise hammering and annealing marks, suggesting they'd cracked the code for working cosmic iron without shattering it. Modern blacksmiths attempting to replicate the process found it requires a temperature window so narrow, just below 1900 degrees Fahrenheit, that even a few degrees too hot or cold ruins the material. How did the Egyptians, lacking pyrometers, achieve such control? Then there's the mystery of their gold. Some royal ornaments from the 12th dynasty contain traces of platinum, a metal that melts at over 3200 degrees Fahrenheit, far beyond the capability of ancient crucibles. Unless they weren't melting it at all. Recent experiments suggest the Egyptians might have used mercury to dissolve platinum particles from alluvial deposits, then burned away the mercury with controlled heat, leaving behind a fine powder that could be cold hammered into jewelry. This mercury amalgam technique wouldn't be documented again until medieval alchemists stumbled upon it 3,000 years later, but copper reveals their true metallurgical genius. Workers at the Sinai mines produced axes and chisels with arsenic additives up to 4%, creating alloys harder than pure copper but less brittle than bronze. The process was deadly. Arsenic fumes would have poisoned smelters within years. Yet tomb illustrations show workers using long tubes to blow air into furnaces from a safe distance, possibly the earliest example of industrial safety measures. Some copper artifacts even show signs of work hardening, a method of strengthening metal through repeated hammering that Europe wouldn't rediscover until the Middle Ages. The most haunting clue lies in a neglected corner of the Leiden papyrus. Amidst spells and medical recipes is a passage describing the green powder of Horus, a substance that, when added to molten copper, supposedly turned it golden. For years, scholars dismissed it as alchemical fantasy until archaeologists found crucibles near Memphis coated with residue of malachite and zinc oxide. Mixed in the right proportions, these minerals produce brass, a gold-like alloy. It seems the Egyptians didn't just stumble upon metallurgy, they systematized it, treating metalwork as a sacred science where chemistry and magic blurred. What we've uncovered so far may only scratch the surface. A fragmentary text from the Temple of Edfu speaks of a Book of Iron, a lost manual detailing advanced smelting techniques. If it ever existed, its contents could rewrite the history of technology. Until then, these shimmering relics stand as silent witnesses to a craft so refined, so audacious, that its secrets still elude our grasp. They didn't just use metal, they communed with it, bending the very elements to their will in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. The towering statues of Ramses II at Abu Simbel don't just gaze across the Nile. They mark a celestial event so precise it feels like a message carved in stone for the future. Twice a year, on February 22nd and October 22nd, the rising sun penetrates 60 meters deep into the temple's inner sanctum, illuminating statues of Ptah, Amun-Ra, and Ramses himself, while leaving the god of darkness, Ptah, forever in shadow. This isn't random. These dates align with Ramses' coronation and birthday, proving the Egyptians didn't just build temples. They engineered them to fuse astronomy, politics, and divinity into a single, breathtaking spectacle. But how did they achieve such accuracy without telescopes or star charts as we know them? The answer lies in tools so simple yet so effective they blur the line between primitive and genius. The merkit, for instance, was little more than a palm-sized notched stick with a hanging plumb line, yet it functioned as a portable observatory. Priests would sight the North Star through the notch, while the plumb line ensured perfect vertical alignment, allowing them to track celestial movements down to fractions of a degree. Pair this with a Bay-Enamaya or star clock, a palm-sized diagram of constellations etched onto ivory, and suddenly the night sky became a readable calendar. Each hour, a specific decan star would rise, its position corresponding to markings on the clock's outer rim. This wasn't just stargazing, it was celestial mathematics encoded in handheld devices. The real breakthrough, though, came with their understanding of precession, the gradual shift of Earth's axis over centuries. The Temple of Karnak's axis aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, but not as it appears today. Instead, it matches the solstice as it occurred around 1860 BC, suggesting the priests accounted for precession millennia before Hipparchus discovered it in 134 BC. They might have achieved this through meticulous record-keeping. The Palermo stone, a fragmentary royal chronicle, logs annual Nile floods alongside astronomical events, hinting at a multi-generational project to map the sky's slow dance. Then there's Dendera Temple's zodiac ceiling, a swirling map of constellations that includes Taurus the bull and Leo the lion, but with a twist: the positions don't match our night sky. Instead, they depict the sky as it looked in 3450 BC, a date so ancient it suggests the Egyptians preserved astronomical knowledge passed down from a far older culture. Some carvings even show circles of time, concentric rings believed to represent the 26,000-year cycle of Earth's wobble, knowledge European astronomers wouldn't formalize until the 17th century. The most haunting clue lies in the unassuming shadow clocks found in worker villages. These L-shaped devices didn't just tell time, they recorded solstices by tracking the sun's shortest and longest shadows. But here's the mystery: some show where patterns suggesting they were recalibrated every few decades, as if their users knew the solar year wasn't exactly 365 days. In fact, the Cairo calendar, a papyrus from 1200 BC, lists perfect and blemished days based on stellar positions, proving they detected the quarter-day discrepancy that would later prompt the leap year. These alignments weren't just for show. They dictated planting cycles, religious festivals, and even architectural expansions. When a pharaoh added to a temple, the new wing often aligned with a star that had drifted into a new position over centuries, a silent testament to their long-term astronomical vision. The irony: we've spent centuries marveling at Egyptian art and mummies while overlooking their true masterpiece, the sky itself woven into every stone they touched. Their temples weren't just buildings, they were clocks, calendars, and observatories designed to outlast empires and whisper across millennia to those who know how to look up. Buried beside the Great Pyramid in a sealed pit for 45 centuries, Khufu's solar boat isn't just an artifact, it's a masterpiece of naval engineering that rewrites what we thought possible for ancient shipbuilders. Discovered in 1954, this 143-foot vessel, made entirely of cedar planks, looks as if it could set sail today. What's extraordinary isn't just its preservation, but its design. A hull stitched together with 5 miles of hemp rope, yet so watertight that modern engineers suspect it could have survived ocean voyages. This wasn't just a ceremonial barge for the afterlife, it was a triumph of forgotten craftsmanship. The secret lies in the woodwork. Instead of nails or pegs, the planks were lashed together with a sophisticated system of knots that allowed the hull to flex with waves, preventing the rigid cracking that doomed later ships. Even more ingenious, the ropes passed through notches carved inside the planks, invisible from the outside, creating a seamless surface that reduced drag. Modern shipwrights attempting reconstructions found this technique not only held under stress but actually improved with moisture. The hemp swelled to seal gaps tighter than any caulk. Then there's the waterproofing. Analysis of the hull revealed traces of a black, tar-like substance mixed with vegetable oils and beeswax, a composite that repelled water while remaining pliable in extreme temperatures. But the real shock came when researchers found microscopic particles of crushed quartz in the mixture. When sunlight hit the hull, these crystals would have made the boat shimmer as if coated in liquid silver, a dazzling effect that may have had ritual significance. The mystery deepens with the ship's tools. No metal saws or drills were used instead. The precision-cut joints show marks consistent with stone and copper adzes, tools we'd consider hopelessly primitive for such fine work. Yet the plank edges fit so perfectly that even a razor blade can't slip between them. Some theorists suggest the Egyptians might have used steam bending techniques, soaking wood in boiling water to shape curves that defy hand carving. Others point to reliefs in Hatshepsut's temple showing workers using strange T-shaped implements, possibly some form of early lathe or guide system lost to time. Even more baffling is the scale. The solar boat wasn't unique. Texts mention fleets of these vessels, some reportedly over 200 feet long. How did they transport cedar logs hundreds of miles from Lebanon without metal tools to shape them en route? A clue might lie in the Cairo Museum's lesser-known shipwright scroll, a fragmented manual describing a modular construction system where hull sections were prefabricated upstream, then assembled near the Nile. If true, this would make the Egyptians pioneers of prefabrication millennia before industrial shipyards adopted the idea. Perhaps the most haunting detail is the boat's astronomical alignment. Its curved prow and stern mirror the crescent moon, while the deck layout matches constellation patterns from the pyramid texts. This wasn't just a ship, it was a celestial map in wood, a vessel designed to navigate not just water but the cosmos itself. The question isn't whether the Egyptians could sail, it's how much of their maritime knowledge sank with them, leaving us to rediscover what they'd already perfected. Among the treasures buried with Tutankhamun, archaeologists found something unexpected: small alabaster jars still holding traces of a fragrance so potent, its scent lingered after 3,000 years. This wasn't just perfume, it was a technological marvel, proof that the Egyptians had mastered the art of scent with techniques that modern perfumers struggle to replicate. Their creations weren't simple flower waters, they were complex, layered compositions, some requiring months of labor and knowledge of chemistry we'd assume impossible for their time. Take the famed Kai-Fi, a sacred incense described in temple texts as a blend of 16 ingredients, including honey, wine, raisins, myrrh, and juniper. What made it extraordinary wasn't just the recipe but the process. The ingredients were macerated, fermented, and distilled in precise stages, some exposed to sunlight for weeks to alter their chemical properties. Modern gas chromatography of residue found in Thebes reveals molecules like benzyl benzoate, a compound typically requiring alcohol-based extraction, something historians claimed the Egyptians didn't possess. Yet there it is, preserved in the clay stoppers of ancient vials. The real breakthrough, though, was their distillation technology. While traditional history credits the Arabs with inventing distillation in the Middle Ages, Egyptian reliefs at Edfu Temple depict what appear to be sealed stills, with tubes channeling vapor into cooling chambers. Archaeologists experimenting with these designs have produced essential oils remarkably similar to residues found in canopic jars. One particular fresco shows a worker heating a vessel while another collects droplets from a coiled reed, an uncanny precursor to the condenser coils used in modern labs. But the crowning achievement was their preservation methods. At the Temple of Hathor, excavations uncovered ungutariums, ceramic flasks lined with a thin layer of quartz crystals. When filled with perfumed oils, these crystals acted as molecular sieves, filtering impurities and stabilizing the fragrance. Some vessels even showed traces of a resinous coating that sealed the pores, creating an airtight environment. The result, oils that retained their scent for centuries, something today's perfumes can't achieve without synthetic stabilizers. perhaps most telling is the sheer scale of their industry. In the workers' city of Deir el-Medina, archaeologists found entire workshops dedicated to scent production, with standardized measures and quality control marks etched into jars. Receipts from the reign of Ramses III list shipments of frankincense and myrrh in quantities that would dwarf modern essential oil markets. This wasn't a cottage craft, it was a state-sponsored science, with trade networks spanning from Somalia to Cyprus to secure rare ingredients. The tragic irony, we have their formulas painstakingly recorded on papyri, but lack the knowledge to execute them perfectly. A 2000 BC text from the Temple of Philae describes a lotus perfume that changed color with the seasons, a feat modern chemists attribute to pH-sensitive anthocyanins but haven't recreated. Another mentions a solar oil made by exposing infused petals to specific angles of sunlight at solstices. These weren't just recipes, they were alchemical rituals blending astronomy, botany, and physics into a single art. The lesson here isn't just about lost technology, it's about how we define progress. In a world obsessed with synthetics and mass production, the Egyptians remind us that sophistication isn't always about scale. Sometimes it's about patience, precision, and a reverence for nature's secrets we've yet to rediscover. Their perfumes weren't just scents, they were liquid time capsules holding whispers of a science that turned fragrance into something eternal. How did the ancient Egyptians move stones weighing hundreds of tons across miles of desert and lift them into place with pinpoint accuracy? The mainstream explanation, ramps, sleds, and manpower, has never fully satisfied researchers. Too many logistical puzzles remain. Enter one of history's most tantalizing what-ifs, the possibility that they didn't just drag these monoliths but somehow made them weightless. Fringe theories point to the Westcar Papyrus, a text mentioning a magician who made the stones float like papyrus boats on water. Modern researchers speculate this could be a garbled account of acoustic levitation, a phenomenon where sound waves create pressure nodes capable of suspending objects midair. Experiments in the 1970s proved it's possible with small objects using precise ultrasonic frequencies. Scale that up, and you could theoretically lift a 2-ton block, if you had a technology to generate and control such forces. Then there's the mystery of the Isis knot, a recurring hieroglyph often dismissed as decorative, but some engineers note its resemblance to toroidal fields, magnetic or vibrational containment shapes used in modern physics. Could it symbolize an energy field used to neutralize gravity? The walls of the Osirian at Abydos bear carvings that, when mapped as waveforms, match harmonic frequencies known to reduce friction. Even more intriguing, workers' villages near Giza contained caches of unusual quartz crystals, a material known to vibrate at precise frequencies under pressure. But the most compelling evidence might be the stones themselves. At Baalbek in Lebanon, home of the 1,000-ton stone of the pregnant woman, Roman texts describe locals insisting the massive blocks were moved by sound long before the Romans arrived. Similar legends persist in Egypt, where Coptic tales speak of priests striking magical rods to make obelisks rise like sunbeams. Skeptics dismiss these as folklore, but the sheer consistency across cultures raises questions. The darkest clue comes from a sealed chamber beneath the step pyramid. Archaeologists found a collection of bronze rods wrapped in linen, their ends coated in an unknown metallic alloy. When scanned, they emitted faint ultrasonic pulses, not enough to levitate a stone, but eerily close to resonant frequencies used in modern anti-gravity experiments. Were these broken remnants of something greater? Perhaps the truth lies in a lost blend of science and spirituality. The Egyptians saw sound as sacred. Their word for harmony also meant cosmic order. If they discovered acoustic or vibrational principles we're only now rediscovering, it would explain why their monuments feel less like they were built and more like they were conducted into place. Until we find the manual to their forgotten orchestra, the stones will keep their silence and their secrets. Imagine a single building holding the sum of humanity's knowledge, not just poems and histories, but blueprints for machines that defied their time, medical texts describing surgeries we wouldn't attempt for millennia, and astronomical charts mapping celestial movements with impossible precision. This wasn't fantasy. The Great Library of Alexandria was real, and when it burned, it may have taken with it the master keys to ancient Egypt's greatest technological secrets. The tragedy isn't just the loss of scrolls, it's the erasure of entire disciplines. Greek historian Strabo recorded seeing mechanical treatises by Archimedes in the library, describing devices like his legendary heat ray and hydraulic screws. But what about the Egyptian engineers who inspired him? Scrolls from the library's famed Hall of Machines reportedly contained working diagrams for automata, self-moving statues that spoke or poured libations, powered by steam, water, or concealed counterweights. One account mentions a life-sized figure of Isis that raised its arms to bless worshippers when fuel was lit beneath its altar. Were these just priestly tricks or evidence of a mechanical tradition we've barely glimpsed? Then there's the mystery of Hero of Alexandria's sources. His surviving works describe primitive steam engines, vending machines, and even programmable carts, inventions eerily ahead of their time. But in his introductions, he credits the ancients for these ideas. Who were they? Scholars suspect he studied Egyptian texts now lost, possibly works by Imhotep himself. A single reference survives in a Coptic parchment, a book called The Moving of Mountains, supposedly detailing lever systems capable of shifting obelisks. If so, it might explain how the Egyptians positioned 1,000-ton stones with such precision, knowledge reduced to ash. The most devastating losses may have been medical. The library housed an entire wing dedicated to healing, including scrolls from the neighboring temple of Serapeum, where priest-physicians conducted procedures under anesthesia. Byzantine records mention a text called the Golden Knife, detailing brain surgeries performed with copper tools coated in mysterious antibacterial alloys. Other fragments reference light therapy, using polished mirrors to focus sunlight and sterilize wounds, a technique Joseph Lister wouldn't rediscover until the 1800s. Perhaps the greatest wound was to astronomy. The library's rooftop observatory held star catalogues stretching back to the Old Kingdom, with observations so precise they detected the slow wobble of Earth's axis, a phenomenon officially discovered by Hipparchus centuries later. Clement of Alexandria, one of the last scholars to browse the shelves, wrote of a celestial atlas showing the paths of wandering stars beyond Saturn, possibly referencing Uranus or Neptune. Without these records, humanity had to relearn the cosmos from scratch. The fire didn't just burn books, it severed a chain of knowledge. When the library's technical manuscripts vanished, they took with them the methodologies behind Egypt's greatest achievements. Those blank spaces in history, the missing how behind their pyramids, medicines, and machines, aren't just gaps. They're shadows cast by a light we'll never fully see again. And that raises a haunting question. How many of our modern breakthroughs are actually rediscoveries of what the ancients already knew? Beneath the golden masks and glittering amulets of ancient Egypt lies a mystery that turns modern jewelry making on its head. How did artisans without magnifying lenses or electric drills craft gemstone inlays and gold filigree with microscopic precision? Take the famous pendant of Princess Sithatha found at Dahshur. At first glance, it's a stunning display of turquoise and lapis lazuli set into gold. But peer closer, much closer, and you'll find drill holes barely wider than a human hair, bored straight through gemstones harder than steel. The walls of these tunnels are perfectly cylindrical, with no chipping or unevenness, as if made by a machine. Yet these pieces date back to 1850 BC, millennia before the invention of precision drill bits. The enigma deepens when you examine their stone-cutting techniques. A carnelian bead from Tutankhamun's necklace, no larger than a pea, has facets ground at angles accurate to within fractions of a degree. Under electron microscopes, the surfaces show polishing marks consistent with a wheel rotating at over 2,000 revolutions per minute. The problem: no archaeological evidence suggests they had rotary tools capable of such speeds. Some researchers speculate they might have used bow drills with diamond-tipped bits, except diamonds weren't mined in Egypt. Then there's the unsettling perfection of their cloisonné work. On a pectoral from the Middle Kingdom, thin gold wires less than half a millimeter wide form intricate cells holding tiny gem fragments. The spacing between these wires is so uniform that modern jewelers struggle to replicate it without laser guides. How did they achieve such precision? One clue hides in the tomb paintings of Beni Hassan. A mural shows craftsmen peering through hollow reeds filled with water primitive but effective lenses that could magnify details up to 5 times. Another scene depicts workers using a strange U-shaped tool with a taut wire, possibly an early form of micrometer to measure minute thicknesses. But the real breakthrough might lie in the unassuming drill bowls found in workshops near Memphis. These stone basins contain traces of corundum powder, an abrasive harder than quartz mixed with olive oil. When spun with a copper drill, this paste could carve into even the toughest gems. Experiments show that adding a lead weight to the drill adds just enough pressure to create those impossibly smooth holes without fracturing the stone. The most baffling technique, though, is their gem setting. On a ceremonial collar from the 12th dynasty, hundreds of irregularly shaped garnet slivers fit together like a mosaic with no visible gaps. Modern jewelers call this random setting, a method so difficult it requires computer modeling today. The Egyptians seem to have done it by eye, possibly using wax molds to test fits before final placement. Some diadems even feature a technique called invisible setting, where gems slide into hidden grooves without any metal claws holding them, a method Cartier wouldn't patent until the 1930s. Perhaps the greatest testament to their skill is what's missing. Unlike later civilizations, Egyptian jewelry shows no trial and error, no clumsy early attempts. It's as if they inherited a perfected craft from some unrecorded golden age. A fragmentary text from the Temple of Edfu speaks of the 72 scrolls of the goldsmith, a lost manual detailing advanced metallurgy and lapidary secrets. Were these the blueprints behind their miracles of miniaturization? Until we find them, we're left with these shimmering puzzles, objects so flawless they whisper of a technology we're still straining to see, even under our most powerful microscopes. Deep in the granite quarries of Aswan lies a monument that never was the unfinished obelisk, a colossal shaft of stone that would have dwarfed every other obelisk ever raised. Towering at nearly 130 feet and weighing an estimated 1,200 tons, this abandoned project offers an unprecedented glimpse into the staggering ambition and possible limits of ancient Egyptian engineering. What makes it extraordinary isn't just its size, but the snapshot it provides of the carving process frozen in time, revealing techniques that contradict everything we thought we knew about how these monoliths were made. The first shock comes from the obelisk's bed. Unlike modern quarries where stone is cut into blocks, the Egyptians worked directly into the living bedrock, chiseling downward to free the obelisk from the earth in one seamless piece. The trenches surrounding it are barely wide enough for a worker to squeeze through, an intentional design that minimized wasted stone but demanded impossible precision. Marks left by their tools tell a baffling story. Instead of the expected copper chisels, the grooves show signs of something far more efficient. Archaeologists found traces of dolerite, a volcanic rock harder than granite, embedded in the cuts. These were no simple hammers, they were precision instruments, shaped into pounders with edges sharper than modern steel. Experiments show that when swung at the right angle, dolerite can fracture granite along clean planes, almost like splitting wood with a wedge. But the real mystery lies in how they plan to detach this behemoth. The base remains stubbornly connected to the bedrock, interrupted by a fatal flaw, a series of cracks that forced the builders to abandon their work. Yet the intended method is still visible. Along the sides, workers had begun carving narrow channels just wide enough to slide wooden beams through. The plan to pack these spaces with wet timber, which expands as it absorbs water, generating enough force to lift the obelisk free. This same technique was later used by Roman engineers, but never on such a scale. The Aswan obelisk would have required hundreds of simultaneous expansions, each timed perfectly to avoid catastrophic stress. Even more perplexing are the tool marks at the obelisk's intended peak. Here, the stone isn't just roughed out, it's nearly finished, with surfaces smoothed to a sheen that reflects light like glass. How? No abrasives or polishing stones have been found nearby. One theory points to the quarry's proximity to the Nile. Satellite imaging reveals ancient canals that may have carried a specific type of silt rich in quartz particles. Mixed with water and rubbed with leather pads, this slurry could have acted as a natural polishing compound, but the speed of this process defies logic. Modern stonemasons attempting to replicate the finish estimate, it would take years of labor, yet hieroglyphic records suggest obelisks were often completed in months. Then there's the transportation puzzle. The quarry slopes toward the river, but at an angle too slight for sliding, and the ground shows no evidence of the massive sledges used elsewhere. Instead, researchers have uncovered a series of post holes flanking the obelisk's path, spaced at intervals matching descriptions in a fragmented text from Karnak. These may have held pivots for a rolling cradle system, a series of wooden rollers that could be continuously repositioned to inch the monolith forward. Calculations show that with just 200 workers leveraging ropes and counterweights, this method could have moved 1,200 tons at a rate of 30 feet per day. The unfinished obelisk's greatest lesson might be its failure. The cracks that halted its progress reveal something startling. The Egyptians didn't just guess where to quarry. Scans of the bedrock show they'd probed the stone with sounding rods, tapping to detect hidden fissures before carving. This one slipped through, a rare miscalculation in an otherwise flawless tradition. Had it been completed, it would have stood as tall as a 10-story building, a testament to a civilization that looked at a mountain and saw not an obstacle, but raw material waiting to be transformed. Instead, it remains a frozen moment of ambition, a reminder that even the masters of stone sometimes met their match. And in that failure, we find the most human truth of all. Their genius lay not in being infallible, but in daring to attempt the impossible. Every year, when the Nile flooded its banks, it left behind more than just fertile soil. It erased property boundaries, transforming the landscape into a blank slate that demanded precise remeasurement. This wasn't just a practical necessity, it was a sacred duty tied to the Egyptian concept of Maat, the cosmic order they believed governed everything from harvests to the stars. To rebuild these boundaries with near mathematical perfection, the Egyptians developed surveying tools of astonishing sophistication, tools that vanished from history, leaving only cryptic clues in tomb paintings and fragments of papyrus. At the heart of their system was the Merkit, a device so deceptively simple it's often misunderstood. More than just a stargazer's tool, it doubled as a precision level. Workers would stretch a cord between two Merkits aligned to the North Star, creating a reference line accurate to within a fraction of a degree. But the real innovation lay in its plumb bob, a weighted string that didn't just hang vertically. Tomb illustrations show surveyors using it to measure angles by sighting along the cord's shadow at different times of day, effectively creating a primitive theodolite. Modern recreations prove this method could plot land divisions with less than 1% error over miles of terrain. Then there's the Bay Enemi Unut, or palm rod, a notched measuring stick that seems ordinary until you examine its markings. Unlike crude rulers, these rods feature adjustable sliding pegs that allowed scribes to quickly calculate area ratios critical for redistributing land after floods. The Turin taxation papyrus reveals they even accounted for soil quality, using color-coded pegs to mark plots as black earth fertile or red earth poor, adjusting tax burdens accordingly. It was a bureaucratic system as precise as it was fair, but the most tantalizing clues come from the Giza plateau itself. Recent laser scans of the pyramid's base reveal faint, straight grooves cut into the bedrock, too precise to be natural, too regular to be accidental. These lines form perfect right angles extending hundreds of feet, suggesting the Egyptians had a way to project laser-straight guidelines across vast distances. One theory points to polished copper mirrors reflecting sunlight to create beams visible in daylight, a technique later described by Greek mathematicians but possibly borrowed from Egyptian predecessors. The real enigma, though, is the per-emus, a device mentioned in temple inventories as that which measures the earth. No intact examples survive, but a broken wooden artifact from Saqqara offers clues. Its interlocking gears, yes, gears suggest a mechanical calculator for converting linear measurements into area. If confirmed, this would predate the Roman groma by 2 millennia and challenge the entire timeline of surveying technology. What's haunting is how little we've found. These tools were likely made of perishable materials, wood, cord, leather, leaving behind nothing but shadows in art and half-remembered descriptions. Yet their legacy is written in the land itself. The borders they plotted still align with modern fields, their canals still feed farms, and their pyramids still stand as monuments not just to kings, but to the invisible science that made them possible. In a world before satellites, before GPS, they turned the chaotic floods of the Nile into an ordered grid, not with magic, but with mathematics etched into tools we're only beginning to comprehend. Buried in the dusty archives of the Cairo Museum sits an unassuming wooden artifact, the Saqqara bird. At first glance, it looks like a simple children's toy, carved from sycamore wood around 2,200 years ago. But tilt it just right, and something strange emerges: the proportions of its wings, the angle of its tail, even the slight curve of its beak all suggest something far more sophisticated. This isn't just a bird, it's a riddle, one that sparked decades of debate. Was this a ceremonial offering, a child's plaything, or something far more revolutionary, evidence that the ancient Egyptians understood the principles of flight centuries before Da Vinci sketched his first flying machine? The argument for aerodynamic design hinges on its uncanny resemblance to a modern glider. Unlike other bird figurines from the period, which are stylized or symbolic, the Saqqara bird's wings are asymmetrical, with a thicker leading edge tapering to a thinner trailing edge, a precise feature that reduces drag in aircraft wings today. Even more telling is the tail. Instead of the decorative fan shape seen in ritual objects, it's a straight, vertical rudder, exactly what you'd need to stabilize flight. When engineers from the University of Cairo tested a scaled-up replica in a wind tunnel in 2006, they were stunned. With slight adjustments to the tail's angle, the model achieved stable glide patterns, proving it could fly if launched correctly. But skeptics aren't convinced. They point to the absence of any hieroglyphs or texts referencing flight, and the fact that no other similar objects have been found. Could this just be coincidence, a toy that happens to mirror aerodynamics by chance? Some archaeologists suggest it might have been a ceremonial throw stick, a symbolic object used in rituals to represent the god Horus. Others propose it was a weather vane designed to spin on a mast. The lack of paint or gilding, common in religious artifacts, weakens the ceremonial theory, though. If it was sacred, why leave it plain? Then there's the middle ground. What if the Saqqara bird was both toy and prototype? The Egyptians were keen observers of nature. Watching falcons ride thermal currents, they might have mimicked those shapes intuitively, even without grasping the physics. A craftsman could have carved the bird to glide when tossed, delighting children while accidentally stumbling upon principles later formalized by Bernoulli. It wouldn't be the first time play preceded engineering. Think of boomerangs, used for hunting long before their aerodynamics were calculated. The most tantalizing clue lies in an overlooked detail: tiny holes beneath the wings. Some researchers argue these once held feathers, adding lift. Others speculate they anchored strings, turning the bird into an early kite. But the real mystery is the notched base. Too precise to be decorative, it suggests the bird mounted onto something, perhaps a launch platform or even a mechanical pivot. If so, was it part of a larger, lost experiment? We may never know the Saqqara bird's true purpose, but its existence forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient innovation. Whether ritual object, toy, or accidental blueprint, it reminds us that genius doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just a piece of wood sitting quietly in a museum case, waiting for us to look closer. Walk into any museum displaying ancient Egyptian artifacts, and one thing will strike you immediately: the colors. Vibrant blues, radiant greens, deep reds that look like they were painted yesterday, not 3,000 years ago. These aren't just well-preserved pigments, they're a defiance of time itself, colors engineered to outlast the civilizations that created them. At the heart of this mystery lies Egyptian blue, a hue so chemically stable it still glows under ultraviolet light millennia later. But how did a civilization without modern laboratories concoct formulas we still can't perfectly replicate? The secret starts with the ingredients. Egyptian blue isn't just crushed stone, it's a synthetic compound, one of the first human-made pigments in history. Analysis shows it's a precise blend of quartz sand, copper, limestone, and natron, fired at exactly 850 degrees Celsius. That temperature is critical. Even 50 degrees cooler, the reaction fails, 50 degrees hotter, and the mixture turns to slag. Yet tomb records suggest they achieved this consistency batch after batch, implying kilns with controlled airflow and temperature zones far beyond simple pottery furnaces. The real magic, though, happens at the molecular level. When examined under electron microscopes, Egyptian blue crystals form a lattice structure that reflects light in a unique way, resisting the ultraviolet degradation that fades modern pigments. But blue was just the beginning. Take the brilliant green adorning Tutankhamun's funerary mask. Unlike natural greens made from malachite, this pigment contains copper, calcium, and silicon, a synthetic mix similar to Egyptian blue, but with altered ratios that create an entirely different optical effect. Even more impressive is the pink of Thebes, a shade found in temple murals that owes its longevity to crushed cochineal insects mixed with a mordant of alum and honey. This combination creates a chemical bond with plaster so strong that even water barely affects it, a technique textile artists wouldn't rediscover until the Middle Ages. Then there's the enigma of their blacks. While most ancient cultures used soot or charcoal, Egyptian artisans preferred magnetite, a magnetic iron oxide ground to a powder so fine it feels like silk. The process involved washing the mineral in vinegar to remove impurities, then milling it with basalt grinders for weeks until the particles reached nanoscale uniformity. The result, a black so deep it seems to absorb light, used for eyeliner that also protected against infections due to its natural antibacterial properties. Modern attempts to recreate it often end up gritty or dull, missing some lost step in the refining process. The most haunting question isn't just how they made these colors, but why they bothered. This level of precision suggests more than decorative intent. In the Temple of Hathor, astronomers painted ceilings with cobalt-doped glass pigments that still gleam like the night sky. Under microscope, these flecks contain traces of silver and gold metals that would have required separate processing steps just to add a subtle shimmer. Was this mere artistry, or did they understand these metals enhanced the pigment's light fastness? A papyrus from the Tebtunis collection mentions color that breathes with the sun, hinting at a sacred science where chemistry and cosmology intertwined. Perhaps the greatest testament to their mastery is what we've failed to reverse engineer. In 2012, conservators at the Louvre discovered that a certain red ochre used in tomb paintings contained nanoparticles of hematite aligned in a way that creates iridescence. To this day, we can't explain how ancient artisans achieved such nano-engineering without electron microscopes. These weren't just colors, they were technologies encoded with knowledge we're only beginning to decipher. And somewhere in their luminous depths, they hold the key to a science that viewed permanence not as a challenge, but as an art form. Picture this: deep in the desert, miles from the nearest village, an Egyptian craftsman kneels beside a bundle of dry reeds. With a few precise strikes of a strange copper rod against a flat stone, sparks suddenly erupt, not the weak flickers of flint and steel, but a bright, sizzling shower that ignites the tinder instantly. This wasn't just luck or primitive fire-making, it was chemistry in action. The ancient Egyptians didn't just rub sticks together and hope for the best. They engineered fire with tools so advanced their secrets were lost for millennia. At the heart of their technology was a discovery as revolutionary as it was dangerous. Pyrite and copper alloys could produce sparks hot enough to light fires on demand. Archaeologists have unearthed dozens of these fire-starting kits in worker camps near the pyramids, small copper rods with worn tips, often found alongside chunks of iron pyrite. When struck at the right angle, these metals create a chemical reaction called triboluminescence, generating sparks reaching temperatures over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than modern lighters and far more reliable than friction-based methods. The real genius: these kits were portable, reusable, and worked even in damp conditions critical for expeditions into the wet Nile Delta or rain-soaked quarries. But the Egyptians didn't stop there. Scrolls from the Temple of Edfu describe a more startling method, a powder called the breath of Ra, made from crushed natron, sulfur, and a mysterious red dust that, when mixed with water, spontaneously burst into flames. Modern chemists suspect this dust might have been manganese dioxide, a substance the Egyptians sourced from desert mines and used in glassmaking. Combined with sulfur and the alkaline natron, it could have created an exothermic reaction similar to modern instant heat packs. Temple reliefs show priests using this mixture to light sacred braziers, hinting at a ritualized form of chemical ignition. Perhaps the most puzzling evidence comes from the work camps at Giza. Excavations revealed clay pots filled with a residue of quicklime and charcoal ingredients that, when mixed with water, generate enough heat to ignite tinder. But here's the twist: some pots also contain traces of glycerin, a byproduct of soap making. Add glycerin to quicklime, and you get a reaction so violent it was used in early grenades. Did the Egyptians stumble upon this by accident, or was their mastery of fire even more deliberate than we've imagined? The irony: while we credit Prometheus for giving fire to humanity, the Egyptians treated it as a science. Their tools didn't just make flames, they controlled them, harnessing chemistry in ways we're only now reconstructing. And somewhere in the ashes of their workshops, there might still lie recipes for fire we've yet to rediscover. Buried alongside mummies and tucked away in forgotten tombs, ancient Egyptian linen shimmers with a perfection that baffles modern textile experts. These weren't just simple cloths, they were engineering marvels, woven with such precision that some fabrics boast thread counts exceeding 500 threads per inch, finer than the highest quality bed sheets available today. How did a civilization without spinning wheels or industrial looms produce textiles that still feel supple and luminous after millennia? The answer lies in a lost symphony of botany, craftsmanship, and technology so advanced it challenges our assumptions about ancient manufacturing. Start with the flax itself. Egyptian linen came from a now extinct subspecies of the plant, cultivated along the Nile's fertile banks. Unlike modern flax, which produces coarse fibers, this variety grew taller and straighter, yielding strands that could be split into filaments nearly as fine as spider silk. Tomb paintings show workers harvesting the plants at a precise stage of ripeness. then retting them, soaking the stalks in sun-warmed Nile water infused with natural enzymes. This wasn't just soaking, it was a chemical process. The river's unique mix of microorganisms and minerals broke down the pectin binding the fibers without weakening them, a balance modern retting vats struggle to replicate artificially. But the real magic happened at the loom. While most ancient cultures used vertical looms with basic warp and weave patterns, the Egyptians developed something radically different. The ground loom, a horizontal frame pegged directly into the earth. Workers operated it while kneeling, using polished bone hooks to separate threads thinner than human hair. The tension came not from weights but from the earth itself, with the loom's frame subtly flexing to maintain even pressure. This allowed weavers to produce fabrics so tightly woven they were naturally waterproof, yet breathable enough to cool the skin in scorching desert heat. The most astonishing examples come from the wrappings of 21st dynasty mummies. Under electron microscopes, their linens reveal alternating S-twist and Z-twist threads in mathematical sequences that create built-in stretch, much like modern performance fabrics. Some even show evidence of enzymatic treatments, possibly using papyrus sap, that made the fibers resistant to mold and insects. This wasn't just weaving, it was textile alchemy, transforming plant matter into a material that defied decay. Perhaps the greatest testament to their skill is what we've failed to recreate. In 2014, a team of French textile historians attempted to replicate a particularly fine tunic from the Louvre's collection. Despite using computer-assisted looms and genetically modified flax, their best effort topped out at 300 threads per inch, still far coarser than the original. The missing ingredient, the human touch. Egyptian spinners worked by moonlight when higher humidity made the fibers more pliable, twisting them between wetted fingers to achieve unparalleled fineness. Their looms weren't machines, they were extensions of the body, calibrated by generations of muscle memory and tactile intuition. What's haunting is how little evidence remains of this industry. The flax rotted, the wooden looms decayed, and the techniques vanished with the last master weavers. Only the fabrics endure, whispering of a time when thread wasn't just measured but mastered. A silent revolution woven strand by strand, now frayed into the edges of history. Walk into any museum displaying Egyptian papyri, and you'll notice something extraordinary. These scrolls, some over 4,000 years old, remain flexible, their inks crisp, their surfaces free of the mold and decay that should have consumed them centuries ago. In the damp, shifting climate of the Nile, where even stone crumbles, how did these delicate plant fibers outlast empires? The answer lies in a forgotten alchemy of chemistry and craftsmanship, a preservation science so effective that modern conservators still can't fully replicate it. Start with the papyrus plant itself. The Egyptians didn't just harvest it, they cultivated specific strains along the Nile's banks, selecting stalks with thicker pith and fewer vascular bundles, key to producing sheets less prone to cracking. But the real magic began after harvesting. Workers sliced the stalks into thin strips, then soaked them not in plain water, but in a solution of natron and Nile silt. This wasn't just to soften the fibers. The alkaline natron broke down sugars that attract insects, while the silt's mineral content acted as a natural fungicide. Under electron microscopes, preserved sheets showed traces of copper salts, likely from the soaking vats, which further inhibited microbial growth. The assembly process was just as deliberate. Most assume papyrus was simply pressed and dried, but temple reliefs at Edfu depict workers brushing each layer with a translucent gel before bonding. Chemical analysis reveals this was a mix of acacia gum and B. propolis, a resin with antibacterial properties. When layered, these sheets weren't just glued, they were laminated, creating a barrier against humidity. The final step, a polish with smooth stones heated just enough to activate the gum's adhesive qualities without scorching the fibers. The result was a surface so uniform that ink didn't feather, a feat modern paper mills struggle to achieve even with synthetic coatings. Yet the true genius lay in their storage. Scrolls meant for tombs were sealed in wooden boxes lined with bitumen-soaked linen, creating an oxygen-deprived environment that halted decay. But it's the breathing scrolls, those used in temples and daily life, that really baffle researchers. These were rolled around cedar dowels, a wood rich in aromatic oils that repel insects, then wrapped in cloth impregnated with a blend of myrrh and crushed juniper berries. In the sweltering heat of Egypt, this combination created a microclimate of volatile organic compounds that deterred pests and slowed oxidation. The most tantalizing clue comes from the Tebtunis library, where excavators found scrolls stored in clay jars with peculiar residues. Gas chromatography detected traces of a fermented lotus extract, a substance known to absorb moisture while releasing mild acetic acid vapors, a natural analog to today's archival climate control systems. Even more startling, some jars had inner linings of electrum, a gold-silver alloy. Tests show this metal, when exposed to the acidic vapors, releases ions that suppress mold spores. The tragedy is that we've found the recipes for their perfumes, their paints, even their concrete, but not for papyrus preservation. A single fragmentary text from Oxyrhynchus mentions the sevenfold washing of the reed, hinting at a ritualized cleaning process, but the details are lost. Modern attempts to mimic these methods often fail, our replicas yellow within decades, their inks fading. Perhaps the missing ingredient wasn't a substance, but a philosophy, the Egyptian belief that words were eternal, and thus the medium that carried them must be too. In their relentless pursuit of permanence, they didn't just make paper, they invented time travel. Standing in the shadow of the Colossi of Memnon, those twin giants looming 60 feet above the Theban plain, one question drowns out all others: how did the ancient Egyptians move these behemoths? Each statue weighs approximately 720 tons, equivalent to 200 full-grown elephants, and yet they were dragged over 420 miles from the quarries of Jebel El Omar to their final resting place near Luxor. Modern engineers using cranes and heavy transport vehicles would struggle with such a task today, yet hieroglyphic records suggest the Egyptians achieved this feat in under a week. The secret lies not in mythical levitation, but in a forgotten fusion of physics and brute force ingenuity. The journey began with logistics. Before a single stone was moved, teams of scribes and surveyors mapped the entire route, plotting a path that avoided soft ground where the colossal statues might sink. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of this planning in the form of roadbed depot stations spaced every 10 miles, stocked with spare ropes, lubricants, and tools. But the real breakthrough was their preparation of the terrain itself. Excavations along the transport route reveal a carefully constructed, sliding track made from compacted Nile silt mixed with gypsum, creating a surface as smooth as modern asphalt. When wet, this mixture became nearly frictionless, allowing sledges to glide with minimal resistance. Then came the sledges, not simple wooden platforms, but sophisticated machines in their own right. Tomb paintings at Deir el-Medina show colossal statues mounted on sledges with curved runners, a design that distributed weight evenly while allowing workers to pivot the load around obstacles. Recent experiments by the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities demonstrated that just 180 men could pull a 700-ton replica on such a sledge over a prepared track, provided they moved in perfect unison. How did they coordinate this without modern communication? The answer may lie in the harmonic overseer, a specialist depicted in reliefs beating a drum in specific rhythms to synchronize the pull teams. But the true marvel was their understanding of leverage. At the Colossus destination, workers didn't just drop the statue onto its base, they lowered it with terrifying precision. A series of ramps and counterweight pits surrounded the installation site, allowing teams to gradually shift the statue's weight onto its pedestal. The most startling discovery came in 2019, when radar scans near the Colossi revealed buried wooden frameworks beneath the statue's feet. These were likely pivot cradles, devices that let workers rock the statues millimeter by millimeter into perfect alignment using nothing but ropes and wooden wedges. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the quarry itself. At Jebel El Omar, researchers found not just the empty sockets where the colossi were carved, but strange, bowl-shaped depressions in the surrounding rock. Chemical analysis revealed traces of vinegar and animal fat, remnants of a technique where workers heated these pools with fire, then doused them with acidic liquid. The resulting thermal shock weakened the stone just enough to carve it with copper tools, a method that would explain how the Egyptians extracted such massive blocks without fracturing them. The colossi of Memnon weren't just statues, they were triumphs of organized labor and forgotten engineering. Every step from quarry to pedestal reveals a system honed to perfection. The sledges optimized for weight distribution, the roads engineered for minimal friction, the lifting systems balancing brute force with delicate control. In an age before pulleys or iron tools, they treated stone like clay, softening, shaping, and shifting it with a mastery we're only beginning to decode. And somewhere in the dust at the colossi's feet, there might still lie the footprints of the workers who whispered to these stones and made them move. Beneath the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean, just off the coast of Egypt, lies a city that vanished for over 1,200 years, Heracleion, a bustling metropolis swallowed by the sea. Rediscovered in 2001 by marine archaeologists, its ruins reveal more than just crumbled temples and statues. Hidden in the silt are traces of an ancient harbor so advanced, it challenges everything we thought we knew about seafaring technology in the ancient world. The most startling discovery, a series of massive, perfectly aligned limestone blocks, each weighing up to 12 tons, arranged in a grid that stretched nearly half a mile along the seabed. These weren't just random stones, they formed the foundation of an artificial island and breakwater system, engineered to withstand the Mediterranean's fiercest storms. The genius of Heracleion's harbor lies in its hydrodynamic design. Unlike natural ports that relied on geography for protection, this was a meticulously planned structure built to manipulate water itself. The breakwaters were angled at precise degrees to deflect waves, while submerged channels directed currents away from docking ships. Even more impressive, archaeologists found traces of a now-vanished wooden framework embedded in the blocks, a lattice of beams that acted like a shock absorber, flexing during storms to prevent catastrophic cracks. Modern engineers have calculated that this design could reduce wave force by up to 70%, a level of efficiency some modern ports struggle to achieve. But how did they build it? The answer lies in the harbor's most puzzling feature, a series of hollowed-out basins discovered near the main quay. These aren't erosion pits, they're casting molds. Evidence suggests the Egyptians used a revolutionary technique called sinking caissons. Workers would construct giant wooden boxes on land, float them to the construction site, then fill them with a quick-setting concrete made from volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. As the mixture hardened, the box would sink, forming a permanent foundation. This same method was used to build parts of the Hoover Dam in the 1930s. Yet here it is, preserved in the ruins of a city that fell beneath the waves before Rome's founding. The real marvel, though, is the harbor's hidden infrastructure. Side-scan sonar revealed a network of channels beneath the main docks, lined with lead pipes that still bear tool marks from their assembly. These weren't for drainage, they were part of a tidal regulation system. By opening and closing sluice gates connected to the pipes, harbor masters could control water levels in the inner basins, ensuring ships could dock safely regardless of the tide. Even more astonishing, sediment analysis shows traces of iron filings mixed with resin, the remnants of an anti-fouling coating, applied to the pipes to prevent barnacle growth, a technique modern navies only adopted in the 1800s. Perhaps the most haunting clue to Heracleion's sophistication lies in the artifacts that weren't there. Despite being a major trade hub linking Egypt to Greece and beyond, archaeologists found almost no shipwrecks in the harbor. This wasn't luck, it was design. The combination of breakwaters, current channels, and tide controls created a haven so safe that even in its death throes, as earthquakes and rising seas dragged the city under, most vessels apparently escaped. The stones now resting on the seabed aren't just ruins, they're the blueprint of a forgotten science, one that tamed the sea with a mastery we're only beginning to measure. And somewhere in those silent, sunken blocks, there might still lie secrets waiting to surface. At the heart of the Great Pyramid, hidden beneath millennia of dust and disbelief, lies a mystery that refuses to stay buried. The possibility that these colossal structures were more than just tombs. What if the pyramids weren't merely monuments to the dead, but sophisticated machines designed to harness and manipulate energy? This isn't fringe fantasy. It's a theory rooted in eerie consistencies between ancient design and modern physics. The pyramid's shape itself is a clue. Geometry studies show that its four-sided form acts as a natural resonator, capable of focusing electromagnetic energy toward its center. In 2018, researchers from ITMO University and the Laser Zentrum Hanover made a startling discovery when exposed to radio waves. A scale model of the Great Pyramid concentrated electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and beneath its base. The pyramid's proportions, it seems, are mathematically tuned to interact with Earth's natural energy fields. Then there's the matter of materials. The pyramid's outer casing stones, long since stolen or eroded, weren't ordinary limestone. Accounts from Herodotus describe them as polished to a mirror finish, made from a unique composite containing crystalline quartz. When subjected to mechanical stress, like the constant wind currents across the Giza Plateau, quartz generates piezoelectricity, small electrical charges. Stacked together by the thousands, these stones could have formed a massive energy network, turning the entire pyramid into a power plant. Even more compelling, the subterranean chambers beneath the pyramid contain traces of saltwater deposits, suggesting the Egyptians may have intentionally created a primitive conductive system using the natural aquifer below, essentially turning the pyramid into a giant chemical battery. But the most haunting evidence comes from the pyramid's internal acoustics. Recent studies by the University of Cambridge revealed that the king's chamber resonates at a frequency of 432 Hz, the same harmonic found in natural systems from ocean waves to the vibrations of chlorophyll in plants. This isn't arbitrary, it's a frequency known to affect human brainwaves, inducing states of deep relaxation or heightened awareness. Were the chambers designed as healing spaces where sound waves aligned with biological rhythms? Ancient texts hint at this. The pyramid texts speak of the hum of the horizon, a vibration that opens the gates of heaven. Modern experiments show that certain frequencies can even alter the molecular structure of water. Given that the pyramid sits atop a vast underground water table, could this resonance have been used to purify or energize the very lifeblood of the Nile? Skeptics, of course, dismiss these ideas as coincidence layered on speculation. They argue that if the pyramids were power plants, where are the wires, the switches, the control mechanisms? Yet the absence of visible technology might be the biggest clue of all. The Egyptians didn't build with plastic and steel, they worked with stone, geometry, and the invisible forces of nature. The pyramid's shafts align with celestial bodies not just for symbolic reasons, but because stars emit electromagnetic pulses that could have been harnessed. The absence of soot in interior passages, long cited as evidence against torchlight, might instead suggest they used something far more advanced. Perhaps wireless energy transfer, a concept Nikola Tesla would toy with millennia later. The most tantalizing question isn't whether the pyramids generated energy, but what that energy was meant to do. Were they cosmic antennas drawing power from the ionosphere, healing generators, bathing initiates in restorative frequencies, or perhaps something more profound? A bridge between the physical and the spiritual, a machine built to commune with forces we're still struggling to name. The stones won't speak, but their silence is deafening. And in that silence, we hear the echo of a technology so advanced, so alien to our modern mindset, that recognizing it would mean rewriting not just history, but the very nature of human potential. From levitating monuments to self-healing concrete, from celestial navigation to lost electrical science, the ancient Egyptians didn't just build pyramids. They engineered miracles that blur the line between history and myth. We've unraveled their surgical precision, their stone-cutting mastery, their perfumes that outlasted dynasties, and yet with every answer, a dozen new questions emerge. The truth is, we've only scratched the surface. For every Dendera light bulb or Baghdad battery we've found, there are countless other technologies buried beneath the sands, or worse, lost to the flames of Alexandria. This isn't just about rewriting history textbooks, it's about humility. We live in an age of AI and quantum computing, yet we still can't replicate Egyptian blue's eternal glow or move 1,000-ton obelisks with such grace. What does that say about progress? Maybe advancement isn't always linear. Maybe some knowledge was so profound, so intertwined with a world view we've forgotten, that it slipped through our fingers like Nile water. But here's the exciting part: the mystery isn't over. New discoveries emerge every year, hidden chambers detected with cosmic rays, papyri decoded by AI, even rumors of an untouched workshop beneath the step pyramid. The past isn't done speaking to us, and that's where you come in. Which of these lost technologies fascinates you the most? Do you think the pyramids were tombs, power plants, or something even stranger? Drop your theories in the comments. Let's geek out over these ancient enigmas together. And if you're hungry for more secrets, whether it's the eerie precision of Inca stonework or the vanished libraries of Mesopotamia, hit that subscribe button. The past is a puzzle with missing pieces, but every click, every shared idea brings us closer to fitting them together. After all, history isn't just about looking back. It's about realizing how much further we have yet to see.